Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name's FPL Phillips and this is a very special edition of Eddie versus the Algorithm where it's an international break. We're all bored out of our minds, so we're going to take a look at a wildcard draft with a computer generated team and my own team going up against each other as usual. Even if you're not playing the wildcard this week, which I'm not sure many of you will be, more people I think will be leaning towards trying to play a bench boost, this team includes some doublers that I think are really good options, not only from myself but also from the computer. There are some really interesting picks in this one, so you're going to want to stick around. I won't keep you guys waiting any longer though, so without any further ado, let's get into things. And as always with Eddie versus the Algorithm, we're kicking things off with a computer-generated team. And at the end, after you've seen both sides, I want you to tell me down below in the comments whose team you think is better, mine or the Algorithm's. And let's see who's in goal then. For the computer-generated team, it's going to be Kepa Arrizabalaga as one of the goalkeepers. We'll also see the other keeper down on the bench when we get to that. But it is important to consider that this is a wildcard draft, and there might be some weird and wacky players on the bench for 1 week only, due to the fact that this is a double game week, and some single game week players are really good options down the line, whereas we might want to bench them now when we have other double game weekers we can play in the starting 11, if that makes sense. The Kepa Arrizabalaga is one with a double game week anyway, 2 home fixtures for Chelsea in this one, and he's looked really good as of late as far as goalkeeping options go. He's great for save points, and Chelsea's defence has looked more solid with the return of Chilwell and Reece James, and overall they've just looked a little bit better since going to that back 5 formation, and hopefully Graham Potter can start to grind out a couple more clean sheets if we're lucky for us as Kepa owners. Aston Villa and Liverpool are definitely not 2 easy sides to go up against, but down the line as well, I think Kepa's got a decent run of fixtures and he's a great goalkeeper. Pretty cheap price that you can rotate with someone else on your bench without having to worry about overspending on goalkeeping options. In defence, then, we're going to see a back 4 this week with some very impressive and quite expensive options for a few of the slots. Trent Alexander-Arnold, perhaps the most surprising pick of this back line. Trippier and Luke Shaw are 2 options I'd be looking very strongly at going for. Trippier will be in every team, and good reason. Since the restart, no defender has a higher expected FPL points total per 90 than Trippier does. He looks fantastic. As always, that stat is taken from the Optistats tool over on the Fantasy Football Fix website, which you can check out for yourself via the link down below in the description. I really love the expected FPL points matrix, and it's a very unique to Fantasy Football Fix. So go ahead and check it out down below via the link, because I'm going to be referencing it quite a number of times throughout this video, so you can check how your players are doing in that regard, and also what players you're thinking of bringing in are looking like for expected FPL points as well. And speaking of that, just to blabber on a bit more, Luke Shaw's actually second in terms of expected FPL points over the same metric as Trippier, so since the restart. Estupiñán and Trippier are also very high up inside the top 5. I know Liverpool haven't looked brilliant defensively overall since game week 17, but over the last couple of game weeks, they have actually improved quite a lot. So far so that they're actually 3rd best for expected goals conceded in the last couple of game weeks. Only Manchester City and Brighton have a better defensive record in that time. Well, Estupiñán coming in from there is one thing to note with Estupiñán is there could be an international duty problem with him. Guess just keep your eyes on Twitter for that one, whether he'll be returning in time to play the first of Brighton's games in the double is my only concern, but that's probably the tougher game anyway against Brentford. Well, he's going to have that Bournemouth fixture anyway. I think it might be a risk worth taking, and if you own Estupiñán, because a lot of people do, since game week 27 where we had that first double for Brighton, of course you will be holding on to him unless something goes really bad, like he gets injured on international duty. But we'll move into the midfield then, a really solid defence, and in midfield we're going to see perhaps another more surprising pick that I don't think too many people would go for on a wildcard this week, and it is the highest expected FPL point scorer over the last couple of game weeks, and he often is the highest expected FPL point scorer, is Mohamed Salah, and it's just a question of whether we can afford the value of him to get him into our team when there are other premium options that look so good. So 2 away fixtures for Liverpool against Manchester City and Chelsea I don't think is the best set of fixtures on paper at all, which is why I'm a little bit surprised that the algorithm has gone for a double up of Trent and Salah, spending quite a significant chunk of its budget on those 2 assets, and also taking the captain's armband. Not having someone like a Rashford or a Bruno in this team is something that does surprise me a little bit, but the algorithm's definitely proven me wrong, like when it went for Liverpool assets against Manchester United a few weeks ago, that it can definitely be right, and the algorithm could be in one of those positions here. Let me know what your opinion is, as mentioned, down below in the comments. Then we've got 2 Brighton midfielders. It's interesting to see that Mitoma and March are the ones that the algorithm has gone for, given that the underlying data of McAllister is quite a significant bit stronger than someone like a Mitoma. It's actually McAllister and March in first and second who are the best, with Mitoma's underlying data quite a way off the other two, really. So going for Mitoma is a little bit surprising, but the algorithm isn't just taking into account underlying data, it is taking into account how the FPL points output is doing of those players. And with McAllister only really showing signs of improvement since game week 23 in the last couple of weeks, perhaps that's something that's playing on the algorithm's decision making there. I still think McAllister is a really, really good pick though, on penalties of course as well, as is the last midfielder who comes into this draft, with Said Benrahma at 5.5 million, a West Ham option of choice for the algorithm side. Now, West Ham have a really decent set of fixtures, and Benrahma's totaled some really nice underlying data, and he's gone really under the radar over the last couple of game weeks. The only problem, I think, with Benrahma is, the only thing that would be putting me off is if there's other midfielders, another 5 set of midfielders that we really like and we favour a bit more. But if there's a cheap option that you need and you're looking for a differential, then I think Benrahma could be a really decent shout, and one that I hadn't even thought of until I just see this algorithm side. And then finally, we're going to look at the front line here, where there's going to be quite a lot of debate as which 3 strikers are the best to target. So we're going to see Tony and Watkins the ones starting this week, and we'll reveal the bench now so we can get a full context of the team, with Erling Haaland down there on the bench for 1 week only. Of course, Erling Haaland's got that groin injury that we've heard about away on international duty. It's always hard to tell with international duty injuries how serious they actually are. I'm assuming that due to the positive signs, news that's been coming out, that Haaland will be back for game week 29, and if not, he'll definitely be back for game week 30. It shouldn't really matter for 29 as he's on the bench anyway, but Tony and Watkins will be the ones starting this week. Tony, I think, should be in probably every team. He looks really, really fantastic. Watkins is another one who is a little bit differential as well. He is getting a lot of goals recently, so more people have been jumping on him week by week. A lot of people are transferring Haaland out for Watkins last week, means his effective ownership is now a lot higher than it was. But 2 really good striking options with fantastic underlying data. Raya down there on the bench as the backup keeper option for Kepa, who will be starting a number of weeks coming up when you look at the fixture rotation between the two. And to do that, I actually use the rotation planner tool over a fantasy football fix, comparing the defensive fixture difficulty of Brentford and Chelsea and seeing which keeper would start each week. It looks like a really nice set of fixtures. Odegaard's a little bit of a surprising one to me, given that Trossard, Martinelli and Xhaka all have better underlying data than him over the last couple of game weeks. He does play the most minutes, he's got a few set pieces as well, and his price is a little bit more favourable than someone like a Saka. But keeping one Arsenal option and choosing it to be Odegaard is something that does surprise me a little bit. And then Tyrone Mings at 4.3 million, a really nice cheap defensive option, which I really rate. So I think Mings is a great option to go for there. So completing a double up on the Aston Villa side. But we'll move into having a look at my team then and how things are different when we look in comparison to the algorithm. I've gone with a bit of a differential keeping solution. I've gone with 2 really cheap options, and now this is a big risk, don't get me wrong. With Danny Ward only being recently dropped and could come back into the side, same kind of goes for Sanchez and Steele. We're not 100% certain that Steele is going to be starting forever for the rest of the season. So there's a small risk that you could end up with no goalkeeper with this team, which would be a disaster, but it saves you so much money, and I've been able to use that and put it into the outfield. I've kept Shaw and Trippier, but I've added in Ben Chilwell, who I think is a really nice option, to go with him instead of Kepa and have a route into the Chelsea defence with that attacking upside that you don't get with Kepa. Then in midfield, I've kept the same Brighton midfielders. I've always liked that duo. Plus then I've changed out Mohamed Salah and I've gone for Bruno Fernandes, and then I've got Marcus Rashford in, who's going to take the captain's armband. I just think you should load up on Manchester United, and it is worth noting that we have blanks in game week 32 where you're going to need to use the free hit most likely with this side if you still have it left. I'm hoping that if you're using the wildcard this week, this team looks good if you can free hit in game week 32, or you'll just have to use transfers up until that game week to help navigate it. And you don't want to be really taking out players from Man United and Brighton, but needs must maybe in that regard. So do consider that the algorithm team will have less blankers in it for game week 32 if you don't have a free hit left. And you can use the fixture planner tool over on Fantasy Football Fix to check all that stuff out with the upcoming blanks. I've then gone with Maddison as the 5th midfielder and then gone for 2 differential forwards. I would say Havertz and then Alexander Isaac. So I have actually dropped Tony. I've gone for Isaac and Havertz as a little bit of a punt. And then finally on the bench, gone for Harry Kane. So Havertz would probably be like a 1 week punt solution. Then there's enough money in the bank with this side to transfer up to Erling Haaland next week. You'd have Kane back in, obviously, and one of the Brighton midfielders most likely drop into the bench next week. And then I've got Mings and Botman as well. So we've got some double game weeks coming up for Newcastle, which is a big selling point for going for Trippier, Isaac, and Botman, is that they will most likely, or is likely to be a double in game week 31 for either Brighton or Newcastle. So that would be really good. You've got the 3 Brighton assets, you've got the 3 Newcastle assets in this team. That could be really great to get that extra double game week in there. And it's always worth considering on a wild card how many fixtures that each team have left to play, because there are still fixtures to be rearranged. So yeah, that's going to wrap things up. It's come to that time of the video where you need to drop a comment down below and let me know, Team Eddie or Team Algorithm. Give some explanation for why you think that as well, whichever way you are leaning. Thank you to everyone who's been tuning in during the international break. I know we're all bored as hell, but it's nice to produce some FPL content anyway. And we'll definitely be back next week for Eddie versus the Algorithm as we return to how things usually are. Thank you very much for tuning into this one. Drop a like if you did enjoy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Goodbye.